everyone, welcome to Book and BookAndBuJo. I'm Debbie and I'm so glad that you have joined me today as I go over all of the books that I read in February. Let's go ahead and start with some stats. I read 21 books in February. 2 of them I did finish the last bit of it in March. So I'm still counting them for February because I read the bulk of them in February, but I did finish 2 of them in March. So take that as you will. I read 7,817 pages and I listened to 181.4 hours of audiobooks. I had an average star rating of 4.3, which again is great. I've really been enjoying all the books I've been reading lately. And the shortest book that I read and listened to was The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells, and that was under 200 pages. The longest book that I read and listened to was 11/22/63 by Stephen King, which was over 800 pages. I started 8 series, but I continued 4 and I finished 1. I'm going to call that a win. For genres, I read 3 classics, 10 fantasy, 4 nonfiction, 1 horror, 1 paranormal, 1 mystery, and 1 literary fiction. For format, I read 4 books physically, which is pretty good for me because I definitely read physically slower than I do any other book. And I listened to 4 on audio, and then 3 digital books were read. And then the other 10 were mixed media, so either ebook and audio or physical and audio. For audience, I read 11 adult books, 2 new adult, and 8 YA. And I did read 2 debuts, which was pretty cool. I read 9 books from authors that were new to me, and then 9 that I had read from before. I did read 1 novella, and then the rest were full-length novels. I read 16 traditionally published books, 3 self-published, and 2 indie. For diversity, 79% of my books were diverse, which is great. 15 actually had a diversity in them, and then 10 were LGBTQIA+. And I also read 2 nonfiction in February. So my favorite book for February was 11/22/63 by Stephen King. Although my favorite character, I think right now, is Sydney from the Bloodline series by Rochelle Mead. I am really liking her character. She is a very interesting character to have POVs from. I like being in her mind. It's very interesting. My favorite movie for February, I think, was An Unexpected Valentine. It wasn't anything amazing, but it was heartwarming and just funny, and it was very cute. I thoroughly enjoyed it. My favorite TV series was a tie between the new Quantum Leap series and Culinary Class Wars. I loved that series. I watched both seasons of both of those. It was so good. My favorite YouTuber right now is Allison on a Book Break. She has so many fun TBR games that she plays throughout the month, and she is just a hoot. I love her energy and her optimism, and she is just so much fun to watch. My favorite song right now, I think, was The Blessing for February, and that's by Carrie Job and Cody Carnes. My favorite podcaster right now is Sophie Richards, definitely. She is amazing. She is all about the anti-inflammatory lifestyle and teaching women about women's health, which is great. My favorite author, I think, was Rachel Griffin, and I read The Sun and the Star Maker, so good. And I think my favorite audiobook narrator was Andrew Falaise, I think that's how you say it, and he was the narrator for The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. Great job. And now to the books. The first book that I finished was Moby Dick by Herman Melville, and this was a classic, and I gave it 3.75, 3.5, and we'll just go with 3.5 stars. It was good, not amazing. Next up, I read Dragon Cursed, and that was by Elise Kova, and I gave that one 4.75 stars. Almost a 5-star, not quite, so we'll just say 4.5. And then I finished The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells, and that was a novella, a horror novella, and I gave that one 3.5 stars. Then was 11/22/63, which has to be my favorite book of the month. It was so good. Stephen King did an amazing job with this one, and I also thoroughly enjoyed the miniseries that was on Netflix. Next, I read The Sun and the Star Maker by Rachel Griffin, and that one I did give 5 stars. It made me feel the entire gamut of emotions, from like frustrated, angry, hurt, and confused, all the way to joyous and full of love and hope and full of despair. Like that, you get everything all in there, and the story was fun and the characters were interesting. I just thoroughly enjoyed my time with that book. Next, I read Love in the Time of Cholera, another classic, and this was by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. I think I liked this one just a little bit better than 100 Years of Solitude, but still both were 3.5 stars. Then I read another classic, and that was Anne's House of Dreams by L.M. Montgomery, and this is book 5 in the Anne of Green Gables series, and this was a reread, and it continues to be a 5-star series for me. Next was an unexpected read that I wasn't planning on reading this in February, but I did thoroughly enjoy it, and that was A War of Wyverns by S.F. Williamson, and it's the second book in the Language of Dragons series, and I gave this one 4.75 stars. So we'll just say 4.5 stars. It was really good. Not quite a 5-star, but definitely a 4.5. And I liked the continuation of the story, and I actually liked this book better than I liked the first book. Next was V.E. Schwab's A Gathering of Shadows, the second book in the Shades of Magic series, and I continue to love this series, and I think I gave this one 4.2 stars, so not quite 4, but not quite a 4.5, so right there in the middle somewhere. There was a few things in this book that were a little too convenient. It's kind of like when you have like that chosen one trope and they just magically know how to do everything they're supposed to be able to do. There was a little bit of that going on here, and sometimes I don't mind it, but this time I guess I was hoping for a little bit more. Still absolutely a 4-star, and I can't wait to get to the third book in the series. Next, I read Direbound by Sable Sorensen, and this was the book club book for In Other Words with Amanda from The Reading and Writing Life, and I gave this one a 4.25, so we'll say a 4-star. It was really good. I did thoroughly enjoy it, and I loved the dire wolves that were in the story, and the twists and turns that were taken, and some of the reveals were interesting. I feel like it was a little tropey at times, like there's a little too many tropes all in a row, but otherwise I thoroughly enjoyed my time with that book. Next, we get into some of the heavy hitters, and I read Harold by Rob J. Hayes, the first book in the Age of the God Eater series, and I gave this one 4.25 as well. I think after sitting with a little bit, if I had to round it up or down to a 4 or a 4.5, I'd probably go more 4.5. I did thoroughly enjoy this one. And then I read The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, the first book in the Bloodsworn saga. Loved it. Liked it so much better than the Of Blood and Bone series. That's probably my least favorite series of his. I like The Faithful and the Fallen right now is my favorite series of his, but I think Bloodsworn Saga may kind of pull ahead of that one, and I gave that one 4.5 stars. Then I read The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. Love the audiobook narrator, and this one I did give a 5-star, and it was so much fun. It was, I want to say it was definitely more fast-paced, but it gave me the Sherlock Holmes vibes that I was looking for and hoping for in the story, as well as the fun fantasy aspect with it too, with the magic system that was there and the Leviathans, and it was just so much fun. It had kind of a little bit of a, like with cyberpunk, biopunk aspect to it as well. Loved it. Next, I read another favorite of the month, and that was Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I absolutely loved this book. I had so much fun with it. I gave this one 5 stars. It was great. I loved the original Pride and Prejudice story that was in here, and then all the tweaks with the learning to use swords and the zombies that were in there and the fighting scenes, and it was just so fun. I had such a good time with this one. Very entertaining. Now, if you're a purist, you may not feel quite the same. And if you're an extreme history buff, you may have to suspend some of your beliefs a little bit, because the time period of this time doesn't necessarily match up with some of the education and things that they got through Japanese sword fighting and all of that. But if you can just let that go a little bit, you will thoroughly enjoy the story. Next up was The Indigo Spell by Rochelle Mead. And again, I love Sydney's character. I love Adrian's character. I love the dynamic between the two of them together, as well as the dynamic between them and all the other characters that are in the story. And I am thoroughly loving this entire series. 4.5 stars. And I just started The Fiery Heart, the next book in the series, and I'm liking that one too. Next up, I finished Can I Live? Dare to Go from Effed Up to Fabulous by Grace Redman, and this was a nonfiction, and I did give this one 4 stars, and I learned quite a bit from there. She had some great applications. So at the end of each chapter, she would have an activity that went along with that chapter to help you learn and grow and apply what you learned to your life, which I thought was wonderful, and I got quite a few good takeaways from the book. And then I read A War of the Fates, the final book in the Fate-Born trilogy, and that's by A.R. Colbert, and I gave that one 4 stars as well. The whole series is a 4-star. I read the prequel and all 3 of the books in the trilogy, and they are so good. I thought it was such a fun fantasy story. It's nothing special necessarily, but it was entertaining. It was heartwarming. It had action, and it had betrayals and twists and turns, and the magic system's interesting. Each of the fated, they're special chosen females that are in and amongst the population, and there's these little crystal balls that kind of have each person's fate in them, and as the fated, you are assigned a certain amount of those lives, and for each of those lives you can kind of see their destiny, so to speak, and see some of the future stuff that happens, and if you need to intervene or let it play or whatever to keep your person on the right track. And we're down to the last 3. So the next is The Sound of Murder, and that was by K.L. Montgomery, and this was so cute. So it's a play on words, a touring musical group that is putting on The Sound of Music, and there happens to be a murder, and they need to figure out who done it, what happened, and all of that, all in amongst the rehearsals and getting ready for the performance and everything. And it was, again, just cute. It's a popcorn read. It's kind of a fluff book, I guess you could say, but it was entertaining, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it, and I read through it a whole lot faster than I thought it was going to be. So super quick read, fast-paced, quirky characters, and just a lot of fun. I also finished The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington, and I did really enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars, and I'm interested to see where the rest of the series goes. I've already read The Will of the Many, like most of you have, and I know this is much earlier work, but I still can appreciate it for what it is, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And that one I did finish right at the beginning of March, like March 2nd or 3rd. And then the final book I only finished it in March because it was a library book and I didn't want to take it on my trip with me. So I wasn't able to read it, otherwise I would have finished it in February. But I finished it a couple days into March, and that was Cobalt Red by Siddharth Kara. And that is a heavy-hitting book, very eye-opening, very intriguing. Yeah, so it's basically about the Congo area, the Republic of Congo in Africa, and the cobalt mining that happens there. And there's some other things that are mined there as well, copper and a couple other things. And yeah, the slave labor, the atrocities that happen, the unsafeness at all of the mines, and we're trying to save the environment by using all of these rechargeable devices, electric vehicles, and all of that. And all of that is powered by cobalt, which is basically powered by all of these people that are in these horrible conditions, pulling it out of the ground so that we can then power all of our stuff. And so it's very eye-opening. So it was very interesting, and I am very glad that I read that. And that one I read for the Boundless Book Club, and that's with The Story Over. And I will leave all of the book clubs linked down below in case you would like to check them out and join in on all the fun. And that is all that I have for you for my February stats and wrap up. And Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want it, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any other bookish content. And until next time, keep reading. Bye!